Okay, congratulations on finishing the chapter 2. And here we are in chapter 3. And we are going to optimize some of the models that we created for VFX applications for being used in game engines. Because game engines really do not love high polygon amounts. And if you remember, we are now in a speed tree for games. And you see the application is no different to what it was. Instead of having that resolution slider, which was high, medium, and low, we have the amount of the LOD that we can create. So the main difference between the games and the VFX is the resolution. And a lot of that resolution comes when we use a lot of the leaves. So in this case, we're not going to use individual leaves. We're going to cluster some leaves, take a screenshot, make a material and import them here, and then use them to populate the tree. So if you remember the bush example, we're going to create a bush, but also we're going to make that low poly so that when we import it into something like Unreal or basically any other game engines out there, it doesn't blow out. So let's go for creating. So as always, I'm going to start with the trunk. And this trunk is too big for something like a bush. Let's go to Spine tab, and you see a lot of the settings, and I mean something more than 95% of the settings are the same. So if you're comfortable making trees inside Cinema Tree, you really have no problem inside Games Modeler. So let's bring this one down to something like 3. And you should remember that this size is in feet. If you want to convert the units, just do them now or upon export. So let's go to skin, and for the skin also I'm going to bring it down, make the end a bit bigger, and overall this is good for my taste. And you should see that the games modeler is games friendly. We do not have a lot of polygons in here, and we should not use a lot of the polygons as well. So just like select it and start adding a bit of noise. And as I said, because this one belongs to the bush, we're not going to do a lot of detailing because a lot of these details are going to be hidden under heavy amounts of the geometry that we create. So let's make the start angle a bit tighter to something like this. And now start bringing in the materials. So we go to here and bring the bark material. So click on here, and I'm going to bring in the address, and this is the albedo that I'm going for. Okay, and also have in mind that do not use high resolution, for example something like 8K or 4K textures on these little small things. And this is for games, and we want to be as efficient as possible. So the normal. And now the normal map is really important because this is really low poly, and the amount of the normal map helps it read a lot better. The gloss and AO. I'm not doing anything to other maps. So let's bring in the AO as well. And this is for the trunk. So I feel like on the skin I can taper off the top part just a little bit, something like this, and remove just a bit of noise out of that. Okay, something like this. Now if we want to bring in the branches, for example, let's bring in these big branches and make them interval and increase the frequency. You see right away it has started to look a lot more beautiful, but the polygon is too high, and for games application it's not really recommended because this is just only the big branches. And later on, if we start to add little branches, let me bring in the little branches, and then the leaves, it's going to have a lot of polygons, and for something small like this is not really suitable for games applications. So we're going to be using a lot of clustering, we're going to make clusters, we're going to create high poly trees, take a screenshot out of them and bring them as material in here and apply them. Okay, now I'm going to create a new speed tree scene. And we are here. Now I already set up the bark material, and that is the same bark material as this one. You really do not need to see me create that again. So in this part, in here, we are going to create a high poly tree and take a screenshot from it. So how do we do that? Let's bring in a trunk. And on this particular case, we really have no limitation on how far on the geometry that we can go. So let's go for segments, and I'm going to bring the absolute really high. I'm going to make it as high poly as possible because this is not going to be used in engine. We are going to take only a screenshot from this and only import the material. So let's increase the relative, bring in the radial and radial relative as well. So now I'm going to, for creating the branch clusters, I'm creating a branch and connecting that to it. So let's go for branch, and we have successfully created a single branch. And I'm not going to create many branches because we really do not want to create a tree out of this one. So let's go and increase the segments on this one because I need to add a lot of detail into this. Okay, something like this. And apply the material to the trunk as well. Let's go and fix the UVs. I'm not doing anything to the trunk because trunk is not going to be included in the screenshot. Actually, let me select it and hit H on it. We need only this branch. So let's go for UV and start to manipulate the UV. Okay, I feel like this bigger is a lot better. Okay, and now we're going to the X and Y plane so that we are looking at it from the top view. And we need to place it here and manipulate it and then take a screenshot from it. And for seeing the screenshot save frames, right click in here, go to window and properties. And in here, there's a section called a screenshot save frame. So let's put it to show. And now this is where the screenshot is going to be taken. And everything inside this red zone is going to be included. So let's take this and go to the spine tab and try to remove a lot of the noise from it. Something like this, because we really need it to be so visible on all sides. So let's take it, go to node mode and select this and go to all. When you go to node mode, I'm going to rotate this one. So we go for rotation and let's rotate in negative so that it lines up with the screenshot that we are taking here. So this is good for now. Now I feel like I need to bring the radius down just a bit to something like this, and it looks more like a branch. And now let's go to UVs again, make this 0 and this one on 1. And I can bring the frictional as well. And now we are seeing more details in here. And now for the scale of the V, let's go for something really low because I really want to be able to see a lot of details on that. So let's say that we are done with this. I'm going to add another layer of branches as well. Let's go for big branches and make them interval instead of being absolute. Yeah, this is interval. And I'm going to the expand and expand this section. So let's increase the frequency just a bit and make the count only 2. Because if I make it 4, for example, or something like this, we're getting something really chaotic. So I'm going to make it 2 Let's put 2. And if you notice in here, we are seeing some of the branches that are pointing not towards the way we want them. So let's go for the spine and change the start angle. And to make this all face the same direction, I'm going to go to forces and add a planar. And because I had selected this one, all of them are now being affected by that. So let's increase the strength and align a strength as well. And now you see all of them are facing the way I want them to face. And if you want more control, you can go in here and increase the force amount as well. So let's go in here. I feel like we really do not want so much. So let's bring some and remove them. Again, let's decrease. Something like this is okay. It's really to start looking a lot better. So let's go for skin, and I want the tip of them to be a little bit larger. Something like this. And now let's add all kinds of details into this. For example, let's select this branch, and I'm going to go here, and on decoratives, I'm going to add lumps. Let's add a lot of them. And when I select them, you see them being affected here. So add some randomization. And then we go to this inner, outer, and cone to be able to select the shape and manipulate it. So we have them here. Let's make the size a bit bigger. So because these are too much, it's taking a bit of time to render. I'm going to generation, and instead of this, let's bring in a more reasonable value, and then later on I do changes to that. So let's make the size a bit bigger, not this big. And again, let's go to segments, and I'm going to add a lot of segments into that to get a lot of details happening. Okay, let's increase this one as well, and also this one. So let's go to the settings and try to make them a bit bigger. Okay, in here, now let's assign another material to it. And done. Okay, now let's go and increase the amount of them. For example, something like 14. No, 14 is too much. Let's go for the same 10 that we had. It's now enough for detailing, and we really do not want to add so much detail into this, because at the end it's going to be taken a screenshot from and placed into a material. So let's go for the big branches in here, and I feel like I really need to turn them down a bit by bringing this down, and also going to the segments and adding a lot of segments in here, because I really want to be able to add a lot of details into this. So let's give them radial segments as well and make the relative amount up. And the good thing about this screenshot is that you are really not bound to anything. You could add as much detail as you want, and it's always going to be taken a screenshot from and be used as a material. So let's go in here and go to the orientation tab. And I want my bigger branches at the end to have a wider angle and narrow up towards the end. So let's check the angle. I'm going to make them something like this, and in here bring this down, because I do not want variance in this. Instead, I'm going to control them using the parent control. So I'm going to make the higher to be like this. Okay, now let's select these and start adding those fine details. Let's bring the light down to be a little bit more controllable and add just a bit of noise to something like this. And I do not want to have any CG as straight lines. I'm doing my best to be, and it's good for this noise. And now I really do not want these branches that are closer to the root to be smaller. So I'm going to here and bring this value down so that I do not get any unexpected value from this. Okay, now it's looking a lot more natural, but I'm going to increase the size just a bit and bring the later ones down just a bit. Okay, something like this. Now we're getting more control out of that, and we have the amount of the cone shape from this that we expect. So let's go in here, and I'm going to increase the frequency just a bit to introduce yet another layer of branches. So let me do something like 4, and it's good, but we need to do some node edits to make this really finer. So let's go for node. I'm selecting this particular one and bring this one up and make the start angle a bit more in there. So let's go to spine, and for the start angle I'm going to bring it up and also select this one and give it a bit of a start angle as well, because I want to be able to retain the cone shape that I expect from this. Okay, this is good. And now, unless you randomize this or do anything that ruins the logic, these are going to be stayed at the same place. So let's go in here. I'm going to add just a little bit amount of roll to make them randomized a bit, so that not all of them are doing the same thing. So add a little bit of randomization, and since it's on a 2D plane, adding the gravity will have really no effect, and I'd rather turn it off. So let's go for parent curl, and I'm adding just a bit of noise so that not all of them are doing the same thing. And because we have so many polygons on these, every maneuver that we do is going to be taken very detailed and very much good. So for the path, I'm going to the profile and add a random path into this and bring the path amount up to give this a bit of more detail. So let's go for path and just a bit of twist to randomize them more. Okay, I feel like I'm happy with this, so let's select them, and I'm going to add a cap onto these to cap them off. So let's go to cap, and I'm going to make this just a bit bigger to be pronounced a little bit better. So we go for offset, and this is good. This is good for what I'm going to do. Now let's go to the material tab and start adding the same material to that. So we go here and we add that material, and now the cap material also has its own material separately. So I'm copying this lump and add them to these big branches as well to add further detailing. But as you know, the amount of the lumps is too much, so I'm going here, and instead of 10, I'm only going to have 3 per branch. Okay, now it's a lot more manageable. Now we're going to add those little branches, and these little branches are going to be somehow like the twigs that are going to hold off the leaves that are going out. So I'm going to, instead of adding a new generator, I'm going to copy this and attach it to the big one as well. And you see, now we're getting the same amount of branches perfectly. And these are acting just like the twigs that we expected. So let's go in here and bring the last to 1 exactly, so that we have more twigs in here. Okay, I feel like this is enough for this one. And of course, if you want to add more detail, you can go to displacement and bring the displacement material in here. So I'm going to go there, create a new displacement. And because this is a repetitive task and this is going to be baked down into a single plane, I'm not going to add displacement. So it's your own idea if you want to do anything. But I'm happy with this. So let's copy this cap generator and assign it to these small twigs in here as well. Okay, let's assign them here. Okay, here we are ready to go. And of course, I'm going to save multiple versions of this so that I can have the leaves and without leaves version as well. So this one is the first version, primary version without leaves. And next on, we're going to add the leaves to this one as well. So I'm going to save a lot of versions from this so that I'm not losing anything in the progress. So after doing all of this work and making sure that you're happy with this, you're going to hit F10 to bring up the material exporter. So align your texture in the red area and make sure that the pivot is set to here, this red line in here. Okay, something like this. And hit F10. And this menu comes up, export material. You want to give it a resolution. I'm good with 2K. And then here you have the material with different outputs available. So we have in here the albedo, the opacity, normal, gloss, AO, subsurface, and subsurface amount. Of course, because this is a bark, we really do not need the subsurface and the subsurface amount in here. And the rest is good. So we need to hit OK to save this material out. And when you hit, it's going to bring up this menu so that you can export the branch, and it's going to be named as the project folder that you have. Okay, we have the branch cluster. I'm going to change this one to 01, and you're going to hit save so that it saves all of the files for you. So let's hit save. And then it's going to take a bit of time and export them for you, and this is the result. This is the albedo. This is the ambient occlusion, gloss, normal, and opacity so that it only shows the white parts and ignores completely the black parts. And here we are ready to move on to create the next variations as well, including the version with the leaves. Okay, but I feel like we need to move on to the next lesson to be able to create them, because this lesson is already taking the amount of time that we expected. So see you in the next lesson.